This program has been brought to you thanks to the generous contributions of our patrons on Patreon. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. And for more content like this, be sure to check out the Modern Alchemist channel on Patreon.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
Greetings, and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Force, the Modern Alchemist, and this is Alchemy Lab. There is no portion of the occult teachings possessed by the world which have been so closely guarded as the fragments of the hermetic teachings which have come down to us over the tens of centuries which have elapsed since the lifetime of its great founder, Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, who dwelt in old Egypt in the days when the present race of men was in its infancy. Contemporary with Abraham, and, if the legends be true, an instructor of that venerable sage, Hermes was, and is, the great central sun of occultism, whose rays have served to illuminate the countless teachings which have been promulgated since his time. All the fundamental and basic teachings embedded in the esoteric teachings of every race may be traced back to Hermes. Even the most ancient teachings of India undoubtedly have their roots in the original hermetic teachings. All right, there is a ton to unpack in this singular paragraph. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, because here we go. The first thing to unpack is, did these people actually live and breathe and suck air and wear sandals or robes or whatever? Did they walk on the face of the earth? This is a tough question. This is a tough question because it requires the gathering of those fragments and pieces. Among these fragments and pieces comes from training within Kabbalah. And the rabbis and those who instruct in Kabbalah will inform you, right out the beginning, in fact, that Kabbalah and anything that relates to Kabbalah, any of the stories or teachings, which include the Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moses, those books, Genesis in particular, carries the name Abraham and discusses Abraham as the great patriarch. They will inform you that none of those books, none of the stories, none of that happened here. None of it. It all happened elsewhere. And by elsewhere, look up. It is a teaching which is a personification that is reduced into human terms, but is designed to express universal interactions, universal characters, universal teachings. So, then it is then incumbent upon us. It is incumbent upon us to determine who these people are. Well, in the very center of this paragraph, just as they're talking about him as a venerable sage, it says Hermes was and is the great central sun, spelled S-U-N, of occultism. There's your hint. There is the clue. We have a great central sun. We know that at one point our star was known as Hermes. Now we know this because of the union of Hermes and Aphrodite, which produced a child which was known as the hermaphrodite, later known as the planet Mercury. Okay? And of course Aphrodite, goddess of love, that would be Venus. So the interaction, the planetary interaction between the sun, known as Hermes, and Aphrodite produced the planetary body Mercury, which we now also call Hermes, named after his father. But originally, the planetary body was known as the hermaphrodite, right? Hermes and Aphrodite together. And if you follow the orbital pattern of that, one side faces the sun, one side faces outward, just like our own moon, okay? Where one faces inward and one faces outward because of the nature of its rotation. So I want you to keep that in mind and understand that concepts like the scribe of the gods, then, is referential to all these celestial forms up in the sky, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. Those are the ancient gods, and Hermes served as their scribe, meaning, and this is an electromagnetic concept here, that if you are the prevailing source point of electromagnetism, then you become the prevailing source point of consciousness. So that the thoughts or the electromagnetic output of other bodies are then taken in by you and then disseminated, literally at the speed of light, to everything and everyone in your immediate vicinity. So, and of course then in fact it's a little bit faster than that because there's issues with gravity and knowing where everything is. This, of course, this is getting far farther than you want to go. But for now, just understand that everything is aware of everything real time, all the time. It's an amazing concept. So keep in mind then that this is true, and that there's an additional layer that layers out where these entities then are capable in ancient thinking, and perhaps even in more current thinking, of incarnating themselves into mortality. So the easiest example then is understanding that Vishnu is also known as Hari, and Vishnu has mortal incarnations like Krishna. So Hare Krishna is an indication of a mortal manifestation of the consciousness of that divinity. But incidentally, by the way, Krishna or Hari or Vishnu is a representation of our current celestial form, Jupiter. So then what we can say is that both simultaneously we can have a mortal incarnation, which we mortals then look to and say, oh look, there's this mortal incarnation. And for generations, centuries really, people have claimed that they are the mortal incarnation of some form of divinity. And certainly Alexander the Great was seen as a mortal incarnation of the god Horus, with all of the eagle symbolism and everything that was surrounding him at the time. So Hermes, there is a planetary body between the sun and Venus, and that's Mercury. Mercury has another name. It also is known as Hermes, and specifically Mercury was at one point known as Hermaphrodite, or the Hermaphrodite, meaning that it was a child between Aphrodite and Hermes. Aphrodite is a name for the goddess of love. Venus is another name for the goddess of love. So the interaction between the planetary body Venus and the sun in some way resulted in the generation of the planet Mercury, which resides between them. So, and Mercury at one point, like I said, was the hermaphrodite. So Hermes for the father, Aphrodite for the mother, hermaphrodite. So Hermes then is the sun. The idea of its rays illuminating teachings is quite literal. in that the electromagnetic input of this star quickens intelligence, livens the heart, keeps everyone going, keeps the planet nice and functional. Like, without this star, nothing would happen. Everything would freeze and we'd all die. So its function as a luminary body is multifold. So the idea then is that we are looking at the teachings of a new system. And the reason why I suggest to you that this is a new system as opposed to a previous system is the indication that these teachings, Hermes dwelt in Egypt when the present race of men was in its infancy. That's us. We are the present race of men. So this is indicating a couple different things. It's giving us a transition point where there was a previous race of men, and then there was us. It causes one to ask ourselves, are we greater or lesser sons of a greater sire? So, and what exactly is our role? If one were to examine Scripture, one would suggest that in fact we are lesser sons of a greater sire, and the meek have inherited the earth. That would be us. We were here. We run everything, so clearly we have inherited it. This idea of the present race of men in its infancy can also illuminate a vast supply of astrotheological and mythological storylines by understanding that there was a previous state of existence on this planet, and then a great number of things happened, all of which were catastrophic, resulting in our current state. That our ancestors, our collective body of humanity, all of them, I'm speaking to all of us, we're all humans, our collective ancestors had a unending preoccupation with recording what was going on, why it was happening, and trying to encode it in such a way that we might not forget to tell these stories later. Because all of those ancient stories are our origin story. They are not prophetic of a later time to come. They always are teaching about what had happened. That's what we're looking at when we look at the Bible. That's what we look at when we're looking at any of these ancient mythological stories that discuss wars or conflict or marriage or birth or death. All of those play into that. All of them are part of that. So when you see characters identified like Abraham, and you see them set against other characters known as Hermes, and you understand that one of these characters is considered by a select group of occultists, Kabbalists, that narrative, that story never took place here, physically on this planet, that they were looking up. They were looking out, away from the planet, to the sky, observing the interaction of other bodies, which now are so incredibly distant that no one can identify them at all without a telescope. Okay? So that is what all of that is about, and all of that is extracted from just this one paragraph.